watched my community wall or you were paying attention to my community wall, I had already talked about this, but of course we had to do a video about it. Before we get started, be sure to check me out, ericdjuly.com, ericdjuly.com. Go listen to my podcast, which is live on all major digital platforms, called For Canon Sake. You can also follow me over at Twitter. Oh yes, Patreon as well. A lot of people ask me about requests. You can do that. Of course, if you go to patreon.com/ericdjuly, you'll learn a little more about that. Depending on what tier you are, you get like requests, and I'll do videos honoring, talking about whatever comic books and stuff you want me to talk about. Memberships, however, is live on my YouTube, which acts sort of in a similar way. Google just takes a little more of a cut, but there's no vlog requests, but there are a lot of cool perks that are going to come with that, specifically like being able to view my old material, streams and such. So check that out. Today we're going to be discussing what happened in issue number 2 of Spider-Verse. Now, for those that don't understand the sort of whole dimension that they're in, before we get started, I want to explain it to you in the way that they explained it, because it's a perfect way. I couldn't explain it any better. But basically, it says the location of the web of life and destiny, which is a nexus point between universes that stabilizes each reality and makes it possible to travel between them. So keep that in mind as you're seeing Miles jump around, and he's in all these different areas and realities and so forth. And in this one, Spider-Verse issue number 2, he is helping out a spider ma'am, and it's Aunt May. Aunt May is a Spider-Man. So Spider-Man. She's old too. And there is some dialogue in it that I don't think was put there by accident. I actually think that it was put there on purpose. Not just for the sake of moving about the dialogue. I think that it was specifically worded in the way that it was for a reason. She's talking to him, and I'll put this on the screen so you guys can see it. But she's talking to him, and he had just did some little deal with one of his, one of his little venom powers and such, and how it can generate heat. And he's like, that's how he's keeping a symbiote in check, because there was another version of Aunt May that was bad that had a symbiote attached to her. And he asks, or more so she asked him, if there are any other people like him, all the other Spider-Man and stuff like him. He says, no, I'm an original. Now, you could take that in a couple of different ways, because he does say, and I know everybody has their interpretation. I'm going to give you mine. But the other interpretations are going to be like, well, it's just a joke. He actually knows he's not an original, type of stuff. It's being sarcastic, right? And then others are saying, well, he's saying an original, not the original. An original, which he's not even that, but which doesn't make sense, doesn't make it any better. But my take on this is how it's been since Miles was created. What was that, roughly 10 years ago, was it? Just about? Because Marvel was set on having a black Spider-Man. So they got half black Spider-Man. And it was so crazy that they killed off the OG Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe, and then brought him from the Ultimate Universe to the main universe. So now he exists in the main universe. And ever since then, it's been this sort of effort. Certainly when you consider the Spider-Verse movie, which now Miles is everybody's favorite tokenized character. I'm not going to spend all the time in the world bashing him, because I've already done my videos. You can go check out when I talk about why I don't like this character. He offers absolutely nothing new. And even if he did, it's still, I don't care for it, because for one, there's too many Spider-Man, and Spider-Man now, because there's so many different versions of him, doesn't feel epic by any means. He doesn't feel any sort of epic. It's just, they go, I know you're talking about with like 2099, Spider-Man or Spider-Woman. And, now we talk about what's going down here in all of these different realities, and we see all of these different other versions of Spider-Man. It just makes it seem not as epic. I've long talked about how they should be killing some of these guys off. I did not like this whole Nexus and such. I thought that was a crazy bad addition. I always have thought that that's been the case. This is a bad addition to Spider-Man's lore. But he doesn't feel as epic. He shows up in everybody's book, a version of Spider-Man. So he's everywhere. You can't get away from him. Where he used to pop up in somebody else's book and it felt like it meant something. Now it doesn't feel like that, mainly because there's so many different versions of him. And this version, I know, is everybody's favorite tokenized character because of what happened in the Spider-Verse movie. But I think that's also part of the effort to push Peter Parker to the back, right? Even though we know that he's the OG, to push him to the back, certainly among new generations, because in some of the arguments and conversations that I have with people, they think that he's a lot a lot older in terms of a character than what he actually is. And by that, I'm meaning Miles Morales. I think he's been around more. And I think that's been the effort. It's like, okay, we can get this new. We wanted to have Black Spider-Man. We've got it. Though in the comics, it wasn't the case, but certainly with the Spider-Verse movie, it helped us out. So now we have this version of Spider-Man that we can get hooked to the newer generation. Unfortunately, it feels like as I'm reading all these different books, they're pushing, yes, Peter Parker has his own books and stuff, but they are pushing him to the back. And I don't think that rhetoric that they use in her asking was by accident. I think it was actually a way that Marvel is saying, yeah, like he's one of the, he's important, right? He's an original, but he's not. He's nothing. He offers nothing new to the character in terms of what a Spider-Man is. He's just Spider-Man with a couple of power changes, and there's a couple of different things that he can do. But in terms of how he acts, his attitude, the corny joke, he acts just like Peter Parker. He's a palette swap. He's not a gender swap, though those exist too. But he's a race swapped Spider-Man, and that's all he is. And I don't like this, and I don't understand why they're doing it. I mean, I can try to make sense of it, and that is, again, it's Spider-Man. Spider-Man is Marvel's most prominent superhero, arguably, but he's most recognizable, prominent, and they are certainly in an age where it seems like it becomes a little more difficult to sell comic books. They are going to try to capture that particular crowd because for whatever reason we live in this obsessed world where people act like they can't relate to characters unless they're the same race as them or same gender as them. That's the only way you can like a character is if that character is the same color as you. You can't have favorite characters that aren't black, like in my case, you know what I mean? Though most of my characters, I love a lot of black characters, but my favorite comic book character is Batman, not a black guy, right? But of course, y'all seen me amp up a lot of different black characters and a lot of them that I love, but I don't feel the need to, what it is I feel like that's insulting to just people to act like their relatability is minimized and limited to their race. Like we can't relate to other people unless we have the same race, gender, sexuality, and so forth. And I just think that's silly. That's silly, but that's the world we live in, which is why you're getting so many different versions of the same character. And when it comes to even crossing over to live action depictions of these characters, it's the same. We're gonna race change this character, and then you get all these Twitter blue check marks. Oh, look at this! The little kids can see themselves in this character now, and all of that sort of nonsense, which is something that's perpetuated by. Don't get me started. Some perpetuated by a lot of bad people. Let's say that, in which they are basically limiting people's they're robbing them of their agency and limiting these kids' individuality to what it is that they have in terms of their color, which I think is such a bad precedent to put in a kid very early on in their life. But that's sort of what they do. And you got now older folks adopting that sort of idea as well, because again, they're the ones that are perpetuating it. It's like representation, diversity, and why is all of that thing is because they've created this nonsensical narrative that you can only relate to people that have the same race and such as you. And that was the whole reason why Miles Morales was created. They wanted a black Spider. Don't take my word for anything. Just go look at interviews and look at the comments of the creators surrounding the character, specifically what he was brought in to be, a black Spider-Man. Certainly trying to capture on that hype with Barack Obama's presidency. I'm not making that up. You don't got to take my word for anything. Don't. But certainly in the comic books, man, yes, you can make an argument that he's better. Like if you play like Spider-Man PS4 game, he's handled a lot better than what he has been in the comic books. But ultimately, I don't like the idea of them trying to move him. It's not, they're moving him to the back. Like Peter Parker's this, and here is Miles, and they're trying to push him like to be on equal footing. And that just is criminal, period. It's criminal.